the number one mistake that I see agency owners make is not so much like things that they say, but it's more about how they say it. The goal of a sales call, especially selling B2B, is not to make friends. It's not to even give value. A lot of agency owners go into sales calls thinking, I'm going to blow this person away with how smart I am and how fancy my offer is and how cool my pillars are of my pitch, when in reality, all business owners care about is working with somebody who really knows what they're doing, an expert. And so the biggest mistake that I see is people go in trying to make friends when they need to go in trying to showcase their expertise through expert level questions, challenging the prospects to make sure that they actually can help them. And it's a very different energy. It's an energy of being an authority on the call versus a friend on the call. And I think that's the number one thing that agency owners make mistakes on, and it costs them a lot of money in the process. So that's the first thing I fix when I work with agencies. I treat sales like an SOP. Just like you would have operations and SOPs in the back end when it comes to fulfillment, client management, onboarding, sales is no different. Sales is more of I got this a great quote from a friend of mine, Cory, but sales is more of a science than it is an art. And I think a lot of people treat it as this thing where it's like, oh, it's all about human connection, which it is, but we need to have a framework in place to follow so that we can create consistency. The biggest part which makes agencies successful in the sales space specifically, or closing space specifically for their agencies, is being able to close deals consistently over long periods of time. That's the difference between having a $1 million a month agency and having a $200K a month agency, is being able to close consistently over years and years and years. And so for me, what I really focus on is this concept of building a framework within your sales process, meaning everything is accounted for and happens the same way every single time. And so for me on my calls and what I teach is I actually have like a framework that I follow on a call that covers all of the key areas that I want to know about somebody's business, at the same time covers all the potential objections. And so, for example, talking about what are you looking for in an agency? What happened with the last agency you worked with? And that gives me a really clear idea of like what they're looking for and also what they're not looking for, so that in my pitch, I can position myself as the agency that they're really needing and looking for, but also allows me to overcome any objections around what they want or don't want. And I do that around basically every aspect of any business that you're working in. So I have a framework for how I start my calls with what I say and how I say it. I have a framework for the discovery of how I ask questions, what I say, how I say it. And then I have a framework for our pitch and a framework for our objection handling. And the beautiful thing about this is it allows us to be able to actually test during sales. So for example, if you get an objection, you actually can now go back and look and go, hey, I missed this section of my framework, which is why I got that objection. I didn't dig enough into their finances and their profit margins, so this is why I'm getting a price objection. That was on me. Now my next call, I can go back and fix that, and I can go deeper in my price qualifications, which allows me to not get that objection next time. And it's this really great process so that we can actually kind of keep our own selves accountable and make adjustments on the fly instead of making the same mistake for months without realizing it because there's nobody watching your calls or keeping you accountable. So that's like the biggest focus for me is building out frameworks that are replicatable in your sales process. We need to get really clear truth of what our prospects are going through. And I like to frame it that way of like, we're trying to get to our prospects' truth of what is actually happening behind the scenes. So when I'm asking questions, this is what I'm looking for. One, I want to go as deep as possible, which I'll give you an example of in a second. And then two, I want to ask questions that nobody else is asking. One of the biggest pieces of feedback that a lot of our members get, and then at Bad Marketing we get, is people, before I even pitch anything, go, this was the best call I've ever had. You've asked me questions that no other agency has asked before. And so a lot of it's really simple, but people are too nervous to get into that much detail. So for example, I try to know so much about a person's business that I understand their business better than they do. And so that's through a lot of questions. I ask hundreds of questions on sales calls. It's very fast paced. It's a lot we dig into. So for example, I'll go through all of your metrics, like what's your average, say I'm talking to like a painting company. And we're trying to get to the bottom of how much money they're making, right? I'm very blunt and I'll be like, cool. So I start with small questions like, what's your average quote price that you give, right? How many are you getting how many of those are you getting per month? How many do you want to be getting, right? If I give you 10 leads, how many of those are closing? And I'm asking all these questions. And those little questions lead to the big questions. Like, cool, how many jobs did you do last month? Right? Now I know how much revenue they're making because I know their average deal price. Then I'll ask them, how much money did you make last month? What was your revenue? What about the month before that and the month before that? And so a lot of people don't like going this deep because they're uncomfortable. But a lot of people will come in and say, like a prospect will say, oh, we did 500K last year. But the reality is maybe they did 200K in a single month and then they had months without any sales. That's a very different business. And so by asking these questions and going that much detail of like, how much revenue did you make this month? What about last month and the month before that? We get really clear pictures. Then I'll go into profit margins. And with contracting companies specifically, I'll give you an example where I'll be like, cool, what's your monthly profit? And they'll always say like, oh, I'm getting 40% profit. I'm making, say, whatever, 10K a month in net profit. And a lot of people will just take that at face value. But if you really understand the industry, I grew up in a family that was contractors, their profit was what they kept to pay their bills. And so one of my questions, so, hey, based on my experience, a lot of contractors will take the profit and that's what they live off of. So is the profit before or after you pay yourself? Oh, it's actually after, it's before I pay myself. So I use that 10K to live. Okay, so your business is not profitable. We asked like a general story of what's currently going on in the business. We'll go over their marketing and their metrics because we're marketing agencies. So we want to understand that first and foremost. If you're a content agency, that should be one of the main subjects is talking about content. So I cover marketing metrics, what services are they using, how is that going, how much they're spending, all of those types of things. Then I go through what their team looks like, primarily wanting to understand if they have a business partner and if it's an equity business partner or if their wife is doing their accounting so that I know I'm gonna need a wife objection, for example. We cover the agency. So what are you looking for in an agency? What are you not looking for in an agency? And then I'll go into goals. And so I like to do my goal question at the very end of my framework because it allows me to kind of bring people down to earth a little bit. So I'll go into, hey, like, what's your goal for the company next 12 months? And they'll tell me, and I'd be like, cool, why is that your goal? What will happen when you get to that goal? And then after I paint this beautiful picture of where they're wanting to go and the vacation that they're wanting to get to, I bring them back down to earth. So where are we at right now then? And I remind them of where we're at. And it kind of creates a bit of a gap of like, I want to make 10 million this year, but you're currently at 3. And then right after that point is when I transition into the pitch and I talk about how we're going to solve their problems and I'm going to get them to their goal. And so that's how I kind of flow through discovery, and it always kind of finishes that way. So I want to know what they're struggling with, what they want to accomplish. I want to know the good things, the bad things. And the goal of that discovery is being able to take where they're stuck in their pain, because everybody's in pain at some point. They're either in pain because they're not where they want to be yet, or they're in pain because they are losing money and the business is not in a good spot. And everybody has somewhere they want to go. And so for me, my goal is to be the bridge. I want to be the thing that takes them to where they want to go. And so that's where the pitch comes in, is when we pitch, we want to talk about their pain, how we're going to solve it, and how we're going to get them to their end goal. And so that's kind of the whole purpose of my discovery, and what I focus on is finding all those details so that I can kind of paint this big picture for them and how we're going to get them there.
We kept running into problems, like we were creating our own problems, where either an entrepreneur couldn't keep up with marketing, and we would like churn a really good sales rep because the entrepreneur couldn't figure out how to turn the lead flow up. Or leads and sales would work really well, and then the operational aspect and fulfillment would like start to fall apart. So we would have to take 7 days off, 2 weeks off of selling for the entrepreneur to catch up on the fulfillment side. And honestly, I just kind of got tired of waiting for the entrepreneur to fix the problem. So what we started to do is we actually have our own marketing agency now, where we can solve that problem on our own. So we're the agency for agencies, so we can help agencies do lead generation for themselves. And then we have our own operational department done for you, where they can actually fix all of the fulfillment and all of the processes and everything like that. Most agency owners are really good at the thing, right? So if they are a Facebook media buying agency, they're really good at buying Facebook traffic, right? If they're an email agency, they're really good at copywriting and writing emails. If they're a creative agency, they love being behind the camera, right? And that allows them to be the artist in what they're good at, right? But a lot of agency owners aren't good at the rest of the business, right? So what we do from a done for you perspective is we handle leads and sales and operations so that the agency owner can stay the artist, like they can stay in their zone of genius, and then we can handle really what I'll call the rest of the business, right? The only thing that we don't do is like finances and things like that, to be determined. That may happen in the future, but we want to be able to handle the growth of the business and just allow the agency owner to stay in their zone where they are better than everybody else. I would spend every minute that I had and every free dollar that I had on generating revenue. That would be it, right? Because a lot of these guys, man, they try to build these operational systems and these workflows and these backends for client management and all of this kind of stuff. And they spend hours and days on being able to build this. And then they build it and they think it's really pretty. And then when they actually put clients through it, it doesn't work because the client experience is actually very different than what they initially mapped it out to be, which I've always found to be really interesting. So until you have enough data to be able to determine this is how the client journey should go, this is how fulfillment should go, this is how the reporting should go, this is what my clients are asking for all the time, then your job should just be to get as many people through the door to be able to get that feedback loop as short as possible. So your time should be spent on revenue generating activities, which is really going to be sales and marketing. So I reverse engineer on price modeling. In order to do that, man, you actually have to understand what your operational expenses and what your fulfillment expenses are to be able to price yourself accordingly. So you need to start there and understand like what your pricing model actually needs to be in order for you to be profitable, at least right now. Because agencies specifically run through something called a variable cost model. So as they grow, they incur more costs, right? So that could be staff members, that could be software, that could be more marketing expenses or all these kinds of things. So as they grow, their operational expenses or OPEX goes up, right? So we need to understand maybe what the forecast is of that, and obviously we help with those things as well.
Sales is just what I eat, sleep, and breathe. And as you know, when I met you in Agency Founders, I was 1.5 to 2 years in building a marketing company around the sales, because I got tired of sending my business out, right? Sending my websites out, sending my PPCs out, sending my metas out, sending websites out. I just got sick of all that. I said, you know what, as a businessman, I need to capitalize on that. So that's where my background comes from, brother. It's just, I eat, sleep, and breathe sales, and I figured out why continue to do accounting if you don't like the niche. Yeah, I made a lot of money. I made millions doing accounting because I was a great salesperson. But when I went through, what I went through during that phase, I needed to get away, and I got away for about 6 years to find myself, brother, and, started from scratch, below scratch. I started from like a negative $7.6 million gap. So I went from there, opened up the call center, and the rest is history. There is no 10x or 20x or 100x without a team. You need a powerful team behind you and around you. So my goal is any company or venture that I get into, I hire people that are smarter than me. I hire people that can actually operate and love process and procedure. Because if I'm the smartest person in the room constantly, I'm not going to grow. So I try to find people around me that are smarter, that are already doing being the best, being the Michael Jordan of that niche that I'm trying to get into, and try to acquire them either to work for me or with me. First of all, it's the system and software. I dumped millions of dollars into that system and software that we created. It's a proprietary system that we've created, and it's just a powerful software which works. But again, it's useless if you don't have the correct team together. So building out the software is one thing because it's going to generate the calls you need to do the cold calling, but having a team of people that are seasoned and, more importantly, have a script that kills. Our script really answers every rebuttal that you can think of for the product that we are selling. So before we sell something, I'm the one that creates the script, and I make sure I am a scientist in that product before I get over to my sales manager, who then funnels it over to the call center reps. We schedule them on the initial acquisition with a analyst, and the analyst is going to go over a overall audit of how their current optimization, overall visibility is online. He's going to share actual reporting with them. And then when he's done, he's going to pitch them on the service to fulfill that and get that to as close to 100% visibility organically within their targeted market area. The closest you can get is about 95%. Now, once that's done, then we ascend them into, okay, let's talk about a PPC, right? Let's talk about, you need a website, your website's dog shit. Let's talk about actual SEO that helps out. So that's kind of our upsell program currently. I am working on an offer currently that's going to be my only offer that I'm going to focus on over the next 6 months, and that's the offer from Moe Makke with Search Atlas. We're white labeling it as Alidex, and I've already sold 15 people on it, and we're trying that out, and we've had nothing but positive KPIs with that. That is going to be my next strongest offer that I'm going to be hyper focused on, because everything else is working accordingly. We're hitting our numbers, but now it's time to have that beast out there. And I really believe that Search Atlas and Alidex is going to be the future for my clients.